Hola, welcome to today's vlog. I hope you're well. We are going to be running through today's push session and also kind of how I'm working around my kind of shoulder injury. For those who do not know, I do have a little front delt niggle, but it's mainly going to be when is it appropriate to move a movement out of a mesocycle or a training split. And I'll give you a few kind of different examples of when to kind of do that. Now, for my example, it's to obviously kind of work around my delt. But if a movement is stagnant for more than 8 weeks, I would move the movement out regardless of the niggle. Now, we could move this out for, and we should really move this out for kind of like for like example. You have a incline Smith impress. You have a incline Smith in place. It kind of makes little to no sense to change it to a squat, right? So movements very similar in kind of movement pattern to something very similar. So a Smith to a dumbbell press or a Smith to an incline kind of chest press, and then kind of rotate them, and then maybe come back to the Smith in a couple of mesocycles time if you truly love that movement. Now for me, I had to prematurely move out a movement which is going to be, if you look in this video here, it's going to be the one next to this machine. And I've basically had to swap it for a wide grip variation, of which I'm doing here. But in the flat variation, for some reason, it's kind of aggravating my shoulder. And I don't really know why, because essentially I would have thought that in an incline position, it would have done that, but it didn't, or it hasn't. So basically what I'm doing is having this as my main kind of chest movement. So I'm warming up my delts in the fact of I've got like a crucifix in place. That's how I'm structuring my kind of split at the minute, or structuring my kind of push day at the minute. And then I'm going to go on to a press, but on this press here, instead of going to from an incline to kind of like a flat variation wide grip, I'm actually just going to come inside, and then basically when my shoulder stops being a prick, basically I will then come outside again. But yeah, that's basically the only real change that I'm making right now. I'm just making very small adjustments here and there, nothing too drastic. And again, I will probably go back to my kind of how I like to structure it. Because I do find that this variation does hit my triceps a little bit, and if I go to like a flat Smith, I find that my systemic fatigue this late on in the kind of day to be a little bit higher than I'd like. So then we move on to a shoulder press variation, which is another adjustment that I made this mesocycle. I'm actually shoulder pressing twice in my split, in my week basically, and the only adjustment I'm making is I'm just making it in a kind of having it in a higher rep range. Then when my shoulder kind of gets back to normal, I will then push it into a lower rep range again, which is how I like to train, because essentially we are training the delt in a higher rep range with something like a lat raise, with something like a shoulder press. We're not really in that kind of in this range here. We're not really overloading the delt at all. So yeah, we can do this very nicely with a shoulder press, which is again an adjustment that I will remake when my shoulder stops being a prick. So but very generally with you, if you have a movement that basically either is giving you a niggle, or is kind of accumulating with niggles, or your kind of movement is plateauing, they're kind of the circumstances in which you would look at and go, right, okay, I need to kind of take this out of my mesocycle or microcycle or training week, and then replace with something very similar. Once the niggle, or once you feel like your kind of numbers are progressing, or even when the numbers have stagnated on that movement that you swapped in, is then when you would swap in or back out the movement that you swapped out originally, and then put it back in. But essentially, like, to maximize your gains, making very small adjustments to your program, rather than making some absolutely, like, you got this like 5-day split, and then all of a sudden you've got like a 5-day split, but it looks completely different to what you were doing. In my honest opinion, like the person who keeps their training program very, very similar with just tiny adjustments like I'm making here, if you compare them to over a year, I can guarantee that the person who made very small adjustments and got very, very bored with the same structure and program is going to come out with a fuck ton more muscle, because you're just rinsing the same movement patterns. As long as it's well thought out, you're just rinsing the same movement patterns over and over and over and over again, progressively overloading at every single kind of avenue. That person doing that rather than chopping and changing every single like mesocycle, that person's going to come away with a fuck ton of new tissue. And again, you can work around it with niggles, etc., because you can just swap out tiny little variables and then keep the ball moving, if that makes sense. I just realised that like 4 of these angles are absolutely tragic, but we'll rectify that. But that was, we also after this did some abs, but I don't think I filmed it anyway. But that was basically when to change out of movement, or if and when to change out of movement. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you enjoyed the start of this vlog, because I actually quite enjoy this. I said I didn't enjoy it at all, but I really enjoy it. But hope you enjoyed it, and I will speak to you in the next vloggy poo.